Welcome back to the Tavern Between Dimensions, a monthly tabletop RPG podcast. We're now going to go behind the screen in the DM's table where we discuss things on how to run a successful tabletop game. And to do that, we turn to Dan. Dan, what have you brought to us today?
So, in that last section, we spent quite a while talking about kind of how you would or wouldn't mold your character to the setting of a campaign, to kind of emphasize or stand against kind of themes and ideas within a setting. So, I think it just makes sense if we talk about campaign settings, right? Especially within the D&D crowd, the kind of go-to setting is going to be a middle to high magic fantasy world, maybe Forgotten Realms. With the rise of Critical Role, I could expect that kind of the Exandria setting, which is sort of similar to the Forgotten Realms in terms of tone. We've touched upon this lightly in previous episodes, but I just wanted to kind of bring a spotlight to other campaign settings within the kind of the D&D universe, the Wizards universe, and further afield that aren't necessarily middling to high fantasy, Faerun / Exandria style settings.
Okay. What have you got in mind?
Well, so I mean, the first one, the first stop on this ride is a setting that actually I've personally wanted to run for ages, and it's always it's a setting that I've always brought up when discussing with players about the new setting. It's the Eberen setting, so the baby of Mr. Baker himself. Personally, I love that kind of steampunk style aesthetic, and I mean, Eberen isn't, you can't refer to Eberen as steampunk alone, right? Like, there is so much more nuance to it. But it is this world that kind of originated in 3rd edition D&D. It had its splash books there. It was kind of lightly touched on in 4th edition, and then has had a splat book, which was then revised into Last War, released for 5th edition. What I find fascinating about Eberen, besides the visual thing, like this kind of steampunky aesthetic, is actually the tone of the world is significantly different to, say,
what do you mean
to Forgotten Realms. So, as a setting, Eberen takes place it's primarily based on this large continent that is covered in 13 houses, like city-states, if you will, and generally speaking, the campaigns will take place in the aftermath of this kind of great house war. Think like a Game of Thrones style. They're all been at each other's throats, but the calamity that ended the war is the destruction of one of the houses, and it's a devastating destruction, enough to shock the remaining 12 into this kind of uneasy peace. What we end up with in terms of tone is something a bit more noir. So one of the things, they deliberately kind of gone away with alignments, and they'll deliberately play with alignments. So that red dragon, not necessarily chaotic evil. They really kind of play with this kind of shades of grey style, asking difficult questions. There's also a lot of themes in there that pose interesting moral points. So we were discussing before the recording Warforged. A lot of people seem to love playing Warforged. I mean, Balthazar,
fancy robots.
Fancy robots.
Yeah.
So Warforged specifically Warforged come from Eberron. Within the lore of the story, Warforged were created as soldiers by House Cannith to fight in this great war, which has some real kind of World War One Great War vibes about it. But then the war's over, and we now have these legions of soldiers with kind of clockwork souls with no purpose. Just from that one race, having a whole race of soul-searching warbots, like that's like baseline. That's an easy entry level plot point that you can have in an Eberen campaign.
Sure.
But also from a magical and technological point of view, like we say steampunk, I suppose you can kind of call it magipunk, because low-level magic is prevalent.
Would you call it Arcana Punk?
Quite possibly, yeah. Arcana punk, magipunk. There's artificers come from it, so it's that fusion. There's a great fusion of the population, magic, and technology. It's not kind of diesel punk in the sense because everything's powered by magic. So yeah, I suppose you could call it Arcana punk. But it's the idea that like Timmy, the lamp lighter, isn't using a torch; he's using a wand to light the continual flame spell in that lantern.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. I think in every steampunk-esque campaign needs to have a train encounter.
Mm-hmm.
So Eberen has trains powered by lightning elementals that race across the landscape. You have airships, which are literally airships, but they've got mechanical castings of fly or air elementals bound to them, and so on and so forth. So it's using this magic in a more kind of advanced technological way to progress civilization. And the vast majority of the races are the same. Like the core D&D race books are available in Eberen, but there's just such a tonal shift that I find that really, really interesting.
I like the fact you mentioned like post World War One kind of vibe, like Great Depression almost type of thing, and that sets the tone. And then you add the magic punk, and that's another tone onto it. So you're completely gone away from Forgotten Realms with that.
Yeah, I mean, as a little aside, like a little addendum, there is also a setting. It's based around the tabletop miniature game War Machine and Hordes. It's called the Iron Kingdoms. So Iron Kingdoms, Privateer Press, have recently released an Iron Kingdoms RPG supplement, which now uses a 5th edition rule set. Tonally, it's very similar. It's all about magical technology and pushing the boat out. If you want something, if you like the sound of Eberen, but you want it a bit more high fantasy, and you like the idea of casters using guns or commanding giant metal monstrosity war machines, Iron Kingdoms is a really good shout. It's got its own kind of unique races that are faithful to the tabletop game. Again, it's set in this kind of world war style setting, with Signar facing off against Kador, whilst also battling off pirate raiders from Krix, and the protector of Menoth out in the deserts. So yeah, there's a lot of tension, a lot of potential for storytelling. That's a really cool thing.
Where's the second stop, Dan?
Second stop. So I was having a look at my bookshelves. Julia is currently playing in Curse of Strahd, but I also noticed that when she was prepping for While We're on the Witchlight, she had Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft on the table. Slightly panicked me as to why Witchlight and side by side, but thinking about that book, it contains dozens of domains of dread. So all of these kind of gothic, well, they're not gothic, they're all of these horror settings, and then every flavor of horror, and flavors of horror I didn't know were real until I saw them. A bit like pistachio ice cream, right?
Yeah, too much pistachio.
Sure.
Yeah, they're presented as kind of snippets, if you will, but realistically, reading through these blurbs, you can very easily spin them out into campaigns. If you like the feel, like the gothic horror, which again, let's be honest, Curse of Strahd, million miles away from a stock Forgotten Realms kind of campaign, right? But these domains of dread let you kind of have variations on that theme. There are some in there that I find utterly fascinating. One of the domains focuses on
clowns.
Probably, actually, yeah, probably. A zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
All right.
The zombie apocalypse has hit this domain, and the little kind of mini adventure that they present you is you have to hold the gates as long as you can.
Oh, I like that.
You will die.
Oh.
Like that's kind of the idea of this zombie world.
Call of Duty Zombies D&D version.
Yeah. There's another one in there which again I kind of found horrifying. It's a domain of dread based around a elder brain a mind flayer elder brain that's been afflicted with this degenerative disease, and has accidentally, in trying to find a cure, given vampirism to all its mind flayers. So this is a world haunted by vampiric mind flayers.
Right, so underneath the tentacles, right, they've got fangs.
Yes.
So like they're just like tentacles and then fangs.
Yeah. And obviously those are two very horrifying things. One of the domains which I find very, very interesting is that the horror archetype is social interactions. It's basically based around everyone's a masked noble. They all go to these masquerade balls, but everyone's trying to kind of get one over on everyone, who's going to assassinate who. So you're kind of facing off against your opponents in a very kind of creepy, no one knows. Yeah, there's some fascinating ideas in there. And recently I was pointed in the direction of an article from Sly Flourish on his website, where he is actually playing World of Beyond the Witchlight, and he uses these domains of dread as incursions. So these domains are just kind of breaching into the Feywild, spewing out presumably whatever nastiness is within it, just to give the players a real change of pace and tone, and then kind of wrapping it up. And I found that an interesting idea, that actually you could bring some of this horror into an otherwise not horror game.
So it's like the Oblivion gates, right, in the Oblivion game.
Yeah.
Literally these gates pop up and there's things that pour out and you gotta go in and defeat it and then come out.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, off the back of that, looking at this, there's a number of anthology books that Wizards have released. We've got Ravenloft, we've got Radiant Citadel coming out, we've already had Saltmarsh and Yawning Portal. What's potentially interesting is as a setting, in inverted commas, you could effectively use those as campaign books. So what if you were planes hoppers bouncing between the various domains of dread? What if you were a PI company tasked with solving the mysteries around Candlekeep?
Okay.
So that's another setting, and that's interesting because the theme can potentially change between each kind of adventure. And as an aside, a third party, if we like that idea of everything's going to die and there's nothing you can do about it, there is a Dark Souls 5th edition campaign setting that came out recently, which has had has some rules tweaks to make it work, but from what I gather, it is grueling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd really recommend anybody who's DMing or GMing. There's a free app that Wizards of the Coast put out called Dragon Plus.
Yes.
And it's like a back issues, and in one of the ones previously, apologies, I don't know the exact one, but Volo takes a trip to Barovia and writes about what he sees within Ravenloft and various bits. So it was around one of those domains of dread, and all of that stuff can all build in to that great stuff. So anything where you're looking for that, obviously you get the current 5th edition stuff, but actually you can pick up some dirt cheap 3rd edition, 3.5, 2nd edition, 4th edition books with all of this kind of stuff in the background that can help you really build into that setting.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because the next stop on our ride through the realms
the Dragonlance
doesn't have but this doesn't have a 5th edition book yet. So you would, for information on it, you'd probably be looking at 3rd or 4th edition books. And that is the Dark Sun.
Yes.
Good old Athos.
So wait, here's what I know about Dark Sun, right?
Yes.
It's like deserts, elves. That's about it. Sorry, Dan. Desert and elves.
Yeah, not far off. So
desert and elves. Go for it.
Yeah. So Athos is a particularly interesting one. Elevator pitch. Conan the Barbarian plays D&D 5th edition. Plays D&D. The world is post-apocalyptic.
That's the one.
Everything is desert. The world was devastated by arcane magic. So, very true to the kind of Conan the Barbarian style storytelling. Wizards are evil. Spellcasters, magic users are evil. Everything is hard. If Mad Max was a fantasy setting, it would be in Dark Sun. I remember in the 4th edition rule set, they introduced weapon durability, because actually
I like that.
The clubs that you were swinging were actually just animal bones. No one had armor. But because
So this is a Bear Grylls campaign.
Yes, yeah, it is a survival slog. But what I find very interesting about it is because arcane magic drains the life from the world around you, which is why it's evil. Psionics takes center stage as like the go-to alternative for spellcasting. So psionics is very, very prevalent. You know, there have been times where I'll look through, say, the Dungeons Master Guide and think to myself, like, how would I successfully pull off a low magic campaign using the optional rules in the back? And actually, like, a Dark Sun setting would do it. If you're really into this kind of survivalist feel to your game, where actually a trek from one settlement to the next in itself is a deadly prospect, because who knows?
I feel like I could run that. I'll just use all my hours of watching Bear Grylls on TV and put that to the test and say, right, you have one bone, a dead camel, and some sand. Go.
Yes.
And then see what happens.
Psionics were in 5th edition right at the start, so they are available as UA when they were playtesting. So all the rules are there, but they are incredibly powerful, so you would have to skim them back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think between the Unearthed Arcana or third party, you have to beg my pardon, someone may well have released a kind of third party adjacent Dark Sun style thing for 5th edition already, but it's definitely certainly doable. I would argue. In terms of like non-wizard properties, if we're talking post-apocalyptic, it's not quite D20, but I know that Mephidius recently released a Fallout RPG that uses a 2D20 system. That the idea of running a Fallout RPG tickles my pickle. Just again from that kind of scrappy, like I know, visually very different to Conan the Barbarian style setting, but that scrappy survivalist, you can't rest on your laurels style gameplay, where taking damage is a problem, especially if you're being chased by a massive scorpion. Yeah, very kind of similar themes. And last step on our journey is as far from the Dark Sun setting as I think we can get. And I wanted to bring this up because it's due to be released soon. But let's talk about Spelljammer.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
okay.
D&D does what the hell is happening space opera.
Crazy space.
I'll be honest, like I know of Spelljammer. I know the general gist of it. I've not been able to take the chance to look into it super thoroughly. Obviously, it's being re-released for 5th edition. That's coming out very soon. The one thing that piques my interest is that when I watch the official D&D Spelljammer campaign that they're running on like the official Wizards YouTube channel, someone's playing a Mind Flayer pirate. Like a gunslinger style Mind Flayer. And like that makes me interested, and I would like to know more. But yeah, from what I gather, from what I've seen of it, the races are, everything is over the top. Like it is extremely flamboyant and extra. Any campaign setting where they turn around and go, "Hey, do you remember those like colonial hippos with muskets and monocles? Those are a core race. Here's the GIF. Enjoy." Like where you've got GIF, you've got slime people, astral elves. You're flying through space on your astral ships. Fighting off astral dreadnoughts and Githyanki raiders. Visiting all these worlds because of course you can. You're flying through space.
Like dead god planets and all that stuff.
Yeah. For me, it's just like as a Marvel fan, I adore Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
And like all of that, and like the newer Thor films, like all that really bonkers polychromatic.
It would be like the new Thor film.
Multicolored, makes your eyes go weird. That sounds like Spelljammer.
You're right. I never thought about it like that, but you're right. Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder might just be Spelljammer.
They're basic Spelljammer. I mean, from what we've seen, and I appreciate this is not a Marvel podcast, but in the new film, Thor's going to fly through space in a chariot pulled by flying goats. Like, Spelljammer, baby!
All right.
Well, I do love as well, like, if you look at some sort of Forgotten Realms stuff, when you look at information about Selune, it actually has extra information about the Spelljammer base on her tears, the fragments coming off her. There were like little docking ports on there, and a person with a big telescope can look up at Selune and may see spaceships flying away. So I love the fact that Spelljammer is a big part of things now, and the fact they got something coming out soon is great. And I remember joining the tail end of a Spelljammer campaign in the old sort of editions. I turned up for like... I assume
nothing made sense.
No, it really didn't. And I only turned up for one because it was the finale, and it was a way to introduce me to the friend group that I eventually made up where I was. Yeah. It was batshit insane, but so much fun.
It kind of touches on it in the new Baldur's Gate game right at the start. Yeah, you're literally on a Nautiloid, and there's a Gith, and there's a Mind Flayer, and you're like, yes, this is what I needed, but I didn't know it.
Just gonna, as a little PSA, for anyone who watches the Cormyr Echoes of War campaign, I definitely decided that my baddies were going to be Mind Flayers and Gith Yankees before Baldur's Gate came out. So yeah, if anyone's listening, you owe me royalties. The thing I like about 5th edition is that it can be like, if you want to explore these other ideas in using a rule set that you're familiar with, it is possible. I know in a previous episode I've said that some RPG rule sets are better for certain genres than the D20 system, but I still wanted to kind of shine a light on these things that aren't just kind of traditional fantasy, if you will. I just really, as a little sense check, I mean, Chris, is there a particular campaign setting, style, genre that you love playing in, or would love to run, or something that you love to have more exposure to?
Yeah, do you know what? I've got the book downstairs, and I need to read it, and I need to learn it. The guy who wrote Call of Cthulhu did a 5th edition module, and he's published it. Similarly, I'm just about to receive Ouroboros, which is the 5th edition campaign setting written by the guys who originally wrote World of Warcraft. So I'm hoping that that's going to be absolutely intense. Coil of the Serpent. I've got the PDFs, but I want to read it in the book. Yeah. But these guys, the lore that those guys, Chris Metzen and all those guys created over 15, 20 years of World of Warcraft, and the stuff before in Warcraft, like the precursors, I'm hoping they're going to blow it out of the water. So I'm really looking forward to that. Those are the two campaign things that I'd most like to tuck into, I think, for sure.
Sounds very cool.
Sure. Carl?
I know one of my friends will be remiss if I didn't mention their efforts to convert Pathfinder into 5th edition. We were playing
Pathfinder into 5th edition.
Yeah, basically, because we were a group of people. Not all of us have the time to sort of really get our teeth into Pathfinder. So what he did was he was able to sort of convert Pathfinder into sort of 5th edition, and then the slog at changing the monsters was the big thing. But it also goes to show as well that while most campaigns are built for 5th edition, you can sometimes, I think you mentioned it earlier as well, it doesn't matter what edition it comes from, you can still play it. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to that person. They know who they are.
But yeah, so I mean, as we've discussed, there are loads of different ways of playing D&D. If you fancied a slight change to your traditional swords and sorcery, and now more than ever, it's as easy as it can be to pick these up and give them a go. If nothing else, you could always hire out a beautiful professional DM to maybe run them for you. So, but yes, I think the train's pulling back into the station. We've concluded our very quick tour of the realms, and awesome. Hand the reins back to you, Captain Carl.
Thank you. Lots of great different options, and I'm sure you'll find one for you and your party. But if you could, whichever campaign you pick, like, comment, subscribe down below. Really helps us out. But now, we're going to head over to BYOB. Thanks Thanks for watching. We release segments like this from the Tavern Between Dimensions every Friday here on the Explorers of Elsewhere channel. Otherwise, if you want to listen to the episode in full, you can check us out on Spotify and Amazon Music.